Coming to you from Forager Brewery in Rochester, our town. And welcome to Our Town, the show about Rochester. I'm Eric Olson. If you are a startup, have a startup business, maybe you want your practice delivering your speed pitch, if you're a sports fan and want to witness the largest launch in sport technology, or a small business owner thinking about hiring family members, well, next week is a big week for you. Here to tell us more is entrepreneurial guru Jamie Sundsbak. Hi.
Hi.
So what's going on? What's an entrepreneur and what's going on next week?
So an entrepreneur is basically someone who jumps into the startup scene and wants to start a business. That's the basic definition. And we think entrepreneurship is crucial to what's going on in Rochester and the surrounding area. I think it always has been, and it's something we're trying to bring to light. So for the fourth year, we're doing Global Entrepreneurship Week 2016 here in Rochester. Global Entrepreneurship Week is a fantastic week. I think there's like 17 events now to really inspire and celebrate our entrepreneurs.
And being in Rochester, we've had several small business startups on our show. They've been medical involved, in some fashion. Is that the majority of entrepreneurs you expect to see?
I think what we're seeing more and more is, of course, medical and biotech will always be an important part of the Rochester entrepreneurial ecosystem. But more and more, we're starting to see many other entrepreneurial startups emerge, like in services around food, and a lot of other areas that you wouldn't typically think would come out of Rochester, Minnesota. And I think that that's a positive sign, because I think we need to think about diversity in our business here in Rochester, and I think that we can really...
Well, you think about business, you think about Rochester, big business. I think about large employers, obviously Mayo Clinic, IBM. But small businesses have a role to play also. They're important.
Yep, absolutely. I think if you look at the research that's done by the Kauffman Foundation, which is one of the big entrepreneurial think tanks in the world, they point out the tremendous amount that entrepreneurial startups nationally contribute to the economy, and it's huge. And I think that more and more, as we talk about the initiatives that are going forward with Destination Medical Center, with initiatives like Journey to Growth, we think that entrepreneurship will play a huge role.
So what will we see next week? There's a website you have, right, if people want information.
Yep.
What is that again? .org, I know you said.
It's gewrochester.org. We have a calendar of events there. We have a lot of information about entrepreneurship in general in Rochester and in the world.
And are there any organizations in place in Rochester that specifically help the entrepreneur?
So there are national organizations like the Small Business Development Center here in town, but there's also the organization that I started about 11 weeks ago, a business called Collider, which is focused on helping to incubate businesses. So if you're a serial entrepreneur, we have resources available for you. If you're a first-time entrepreneur, we have resources available to help you start your business and get it going and hopefully ultimately be successful.
Do you help with business plan development?
We do. We do that. We do a lot more. We can do a lot of things around speed pitches, like we're going to have these events, fundraising, things like that is all a really important and crucial part of your business development cycle.
And how can folks connect with Collider?
You can check us out at collider.mn.
Collider.mn. Got to get those right. Before we go, a big networking tip. Is there an easy one or a quick one you can share?
I think the biggest networking tip that I know is just showing up. A lot of people don't show up to events, or they don't take those opportunities. For networking, you just got to get out there and you got to, as they say, press the flesh. You got to shake hands. You got to get to know people, And I think that is actually the biggest networking tip I have, is just get out there, start meeting people, and it's amazing, the connections, and it's amazing what happens down the line.
So in this electronic web world, that still matters, the personal?
Yes, absolutely. In a town like Rochester, in the Rochester area, I've noticed that I've been able to make deeper connections when I'm just focused on meeting people face to face, rather than sharing things on Facebook or Twitter. That helps, and it's super important actually for marketing, even yourself. But I think just getting out, meeting people, and talking to people is actually the most important networking tip.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Jamie.
Our Town is brought to you in part by the following amazing people and organizations.
Clements Subaru proudly partners with award-winning KSMQ Public Television. Clements Subaru of Rochester. Clements' clear value promise is to make buying a car fast, fair, and simple. The University of Minnesota Rochester, an undergraduate health sciences university offering education designed to change tomorrow's healthcare. University of Minnesota Rochester, always in the heart of our community. Prow Company, a hands-on commercial property leasing company, leasing commercial properties in Rochester, Minnesota since 1952. Realtors and brokers welcome. Prow Company. The Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, and the citizens of Minnesota.
And the members of KSMQ Public Television. Thank you.
Starting a new business is so exciting and a little scary. I hope they have a great turnout next week. Also on today's show, we take a walkabout through the new 125 Live Digs. We talk with Kim Norton and Bill Kuisle about this week's election and what it means for you, of course. And big art is a big deal at the 535 Gallery. We're headed there next on Our Town Culture.
I'm Wendy Westlake, and I am the owner of 535 Gallery. We are in Rochester on 6th Avenue Northwest. I have loved, as many artists have, I have loved art all of my life. In college, I took a lot of different art classes and came out with a, what did they call it? It's called actually like a studio arts degree. So I took ceramics and painting, oil painting, sculptures, printmaking, all kinds of things like that. And then after I got married and started my family, I kind of let that all go to the wayside for a while, and then picked up watercolor about 20 years ago. But then just more recently have really enjoyed painting large scale and painting in acrylic. I do really think that Rochester is a great fit for something like 535 Gallery. And one of the reasons I think that is because there are a ton of fantastic artists that live in the Rochester area. And there are also people who are very interested in the arts. And there isn't anything quite like this. There are some good galleries here. There isn't anything that is specifically designated and dedicated to contemporary and specifically large-scale contemporary artwork. I really wanted this to be a gallery that was for Rochester and for Rochester area. And it would be tough to take a 6-foot by 8-foot painting home on the plane with you. So in one sense, it kind of needs to be for Rochester and Rochester area. But we do ship. So if somebody wants to buy something and you live far away, we can handle that. But for the most part, I wanted to cater to the Rochester area. One of the comments that pleases me the most is when people walk into 535 Gallery and they say, oh, I did not expect this. And this feels like New York, or this feels like the West Coast. It feels like a beautiful gallery that we didn't even know that you were here, and how long have you been here? And so that really pleases me. It makes me feel like I accomplished my goal. Well, the upcoming show is really exciting. It's going to be the first ever, and I hope that we'll have many more to continue. This is going to be the first ever Celebrate Rochester Area Artists Show. We have more than 20 artists that will be featured in the show, and it's happening on November 19th from 6 to 9 p.m. You can come and take part in the opening, see all the beautiful artwork, meet the artists. We'll have food and beverages here for you. But the show will showcase and feature the work of these local artists, and they will each have from 1 to 3 pieces. It's a huge variety of stuff, so it's mostly two-dimensional, but it's printmaking, it's photography, it's oil painting, it's acrylic, it's watercolor. You will find something that you love to see here at that show. So we are really happy to be here at 535 Gallery, and we want to invite everybody. We're open to the public. We change out our exhibitions fairly often, so we want you to stop by, come and see what we have. We invite you to just explore this beautiful exhibition space and the beautiful artwork that's showcased here.
With colder weather on its way, many people head indoors for their activities, but some good news in the Park and Rec Department was announced recently that will expand outdoor opportunities year-round. The city has closed on the acquisition of approximately 94 acres adjacent to Game Haven Park as a result of grants and city funding. The master plan for this area envisions Nordic ski trails, a tubing hill, terrain park for snowboarding, and more. Keep your eyes on this project as it develops. Rochester is full of talented people. We've covered many who are artists, musicians, entrepreneurs. If you are into crafts, stop by the Mayo Civic Center on Saturday, November 19th. Browse more than 300 tables of handcrafted items at the Mayo Clinic Employee Crafts Show. Got all day. Doors are open from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Plus there's free parking in downtown Ramps. Enjoy an annual favorite during the holiday season. The historic Mayowood Mansion Christmas tours are now available. Enjoy a fully guided tour of the 1911 mansion, home to 3 generations of the Mayo family. The home is decked out in its Christmas finery. Reservations are required and can be made by calling the History Center of Olmsted County, 507-282-9447. The Rochester Downtown Winter Farmers Market is underway, now in a new building at Graham Park. They have moved into building number 35 at the northeast end of the fairgrounds, which will provide better space for farmers and customers. Open from 9 to 5 every other Saturday. November 19th is the next market day. You'll find there apples, squash, beef, lamb, cheese, eggs, wreaths, baked goods, more, so on and so on. Check them all out, will you? Stay with us as we explore the new 125 Live space on this week's Our Town Walkabout.
I'm Sally Gallagher, the Executive Director of the new 125 Live, which replaces the old Rochester Senior Center. Well, this is the Art Studio A, which is a space where we're going to have lots of activity. It's considered our non-dusty art studio, so things like painting would happen in here. This is an exciting art studio. This is where dusty activities will happen. There are 8 pottery wheels that are going to be placed here. They will be plugged in, again, from the ceiling, which will assure that there are no cords that older adults are going to have to walk over. Now we're in the River Rooms, which is a great space in 125 Live. This space can be used as an entire banquet space. This room is dividable in half or into 4, so we'll be able to use it for classes. Our square dancing group will meet in here, karaoke, and this is our fireplace lounge. We're missing the fireplace because we're still fundraising and hope to have that soon. But the idea of this space is to really bring older adults close to the community, having this really up front and next to the street so they can feel like they're a part of the community. Our fitness center here is filled with pieces of equipment that are, again, senior friendly, designed for older adults. For example, the treadmills have a lower base, easy to get on and off. Beyond us, we have the link to the rec center, which will take us to the gymnasium, and our locker rooms that take us right into the warm water pool. And this is our fantastic billiards room. This room is going to be, when complete, filled with 8 billiard tables. The vision of 125 Live is to really take aging and look at it differently, allowing our community to be very involved in the process of growing older.
Hey there, more in store from our town. Coming up next, Kim Norton and Bill Kuisle are here.
And they answer our big question about the recent election outcome. Stay tuned.
Our past, remembering what made us who we are today. Brought to you by the History Center of Olmsted County.
2016 marks the Rochester Fire Department's sesquicentennial. It was formed in 1866 when the Common Council ordered the organization of 50 volunteers into a hook and ladder company. The company was disbanded by 1867, and Rochester lacked firefighters until 1870 after 2 major fires destroyed several businesses. That year, Rochester purchased a fire engine nicknamed the Little Giant, and in 1871, the first fire station opened at 3rd Street Southeast. In 1898, the department built its new headquarters, Central Station. The city's firefighters managed to stay well equipped after World War II when new technologies rapidly emerged. Today, the professional firefighters of the Rochester Fire Department have advanced far from their volunteer origins, but they still remember their history and the efforts of those early firefighters. For more information, come see the History Center of Olmsted County's exhibit celebrating 150 years of the Rochester Fire Department.
The election on Tuesday, good news for some, not so good for others.
Here to help us sort through the results are Representative Kim Norton, Democrat, and former Representative Bill Kuisle, a Republican. Welcome to you both. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks.
Now, I think it's fair to say that the outcome of the elections on Tuesday were a surprise to many. I'm interested in hearing your takes on why Americans voted and Minnesotans voted the way they did. Can we start with you?
Boy, the why is a big question. I guess I was surprised hearing citizens talk about the need for more civility and how upset they were about the polarization. So for me, it was a big surprise that what they said and how they voted were quite different.
And this is for president we're talking about. What's your take on Minnesota and how they voted?
Well, I think they talk about racial divide, but this is really the inner city against kind of the rest of the world. And if you look at the outcome of this election, it was truly the rural areas voting against the big cities. And I saw it with a different perspective. I live outside of Rochester, and I could see there was something going on that wasn't the normal that was going to happen. And I had told some people on Monday morning that Trump was going to do very well. Was I surprised? Yes, but I mean, it was just a feeling they had that there was something in the air that people. One person described it to me as that the public took a grenade, pulled the pin, threw it at the establishment to see what happens. And that pretty much sums it up. Nobody really knows what's going to happen in this presidency, but the public wanted a change, and they got it.
Not so much change for local in the state legislature, right? Olmsted County?
Things stayed pretty much the same. We have one new elected official, but the partisan divide, if you will, at our community remained exactly as it had been.
And statewide, it is a change for the state legislature.
Indeed.
Right, Kim? How's it changing?
Yes, the Senate flipped, so both the Senate and the House will be Republican, have Republican leads, but the governor, of course, is a Democrat. So unlike nationally, again, one of the things you hear from people is we like checks and balances. We like divided government. We think that's good for us, and yet at the federal level, that's not what they gave us this year.
Well, and I think, again, if you look at where the Senate switched hands in Minnesota, it was in greater Minnesota. It wasn't in the suburbs or the inner cities so much. It was greater Minnesota. There were some districts that flipped there. And so, again, you have to go back to this, that there's some kind of divide there, and it has to be healed. And I'm not exactly sure how to do it, But there's some big problems the state has to face, and the Republicans now have control of both bodies, but they also have Governor Dayton as the governor who's a Democrat.
So the odds of getting things done, did it change net positive or net negative?
I think it got worse, and that's the thing that frustrates me so much about what the electorate says and how they vote, because how do you heal a country and bring us together when the polarization gets further apart? And that's what happened this year. So
well, I'll go back to, I think the polarization was there. Governor Dayton has made some comments over the last and done some policies that really affected greater Minnesota more in the metro area. The buffer strips, banning certain pesticides. And Governor Obama was doing some of the same thing. And so, there was a need for a change, and unfortunately, I'm not sure it set up something to move ahead, but the people spoke, and that's what you have to go by. It was a thin margin, so the Republicans have a big job ahead of them to make sure this works, and hopefully there aren't games played, because this has to be something that moves ahead in the next 2 to 4 years.
So we're seeing this Republican House and Senate, and we're seeing how Minnesotans voted, and you're saying that it was in the cities, that it was more the Democrats in the outstate. Are we looking forward that maybe Minnesota's not going to be a blue state anymore?
I think we have, about a 50-50 divide between the population in the Twin Cities area and the population outstate. And I think rather than becoming more polarized, we need to work together and find common ground. And instead, we seem to choose items to talk about and to legislate on that are those social and economic issues that divide us. And we really need to work in a different way. And again, I'm not sure the outcome of this election is going to move us in that direction. And some of the things I've heard from the GOP leadership at the state aren't leading toward a healing. They're leading toward, we're going to fight the governor. And that's really disappointing to me.
And when you say in a different way, what do you mean? We need to
getting things done.
We need to get things done and work together.
I didn't want to say it, but I mean, just personally looking at healthcare premiums are so exploding. It's an issue that touches everybody in this state, and the sides can't get together for a special session to even do something to try to fix it.
And I think that will still happen, but what you see is a completely different philosophy on how we should go and try to keep costs down. One is big government comes in and tries to dictate what you have for healthcare, and the other is more of a free market. Is there a combination of the two that will work? Well, in the past, it's been the governor and the Democratic control houses at the time pushed through what we have for Minnesota, Medicare. Now, and then the same thing happened with Obamacare. It was all Democratic control and pushed it through. So now we have to back up and say, okay, what will work? What will get the costs down so they're manageable? And that's in Greater Minnesota was one of the keys, because they're seeing premiums of $2,000 to $2,500 a month for a family of 4. How do you even go about trying to get that, your hands around that?
Go ahead.
Well, premiums have been going up for years. This isn't something new. It had been happening anyway. It's why the president said we need to try to do something about it. But I think we need to remember that healthcare and education in particular are common goods. And we hear this rhetoric about big government. Government in a democracy has a purpose, and that's to make sure that the things the market can't do, that the government steps in for the public good. And we need to remember that in our rhetoric and our discussion, that there are some things we need to make sure everybody has equitably, and healthcare is one of those things. And we obviously don't have the answer yet. We need to work on it.
Areas, we believe on the Republican side it's more of a free market, and you manage the free market. You make sure that it's a fair system and let the free market do it. You don't try to get into it and dictate to the people what you have for health insurance and who you go to.
With what happened on the national level, does it really kind of make any actions states do now in the interim kind of moot? I mean, can they act on healthcare legislation, but then if the federal it just changes everything?
Well, I think what we need to remember is that healthcare reform took time to happen, and it's going to take time to change. And so in the short term, we can still do something to help people with their premiums, and that's what we had hoped this special session would take care of. I don't know where that stands now after the election, but in the short term, we can still do things to make the premium increases less painful for people and wait for the long-term changes that I'm sure are coming at the federal level.
And I agree with that. There'll be something done for the interim until everything gets settled down and everybody gets their people in order. This will take about 3 to 4 months before legislation can come forward. So
in Minnesota, you mean?
Minnesota and national. Minnesota and national. I
The
mean,
short-term fix could be done in a month. I mean, we could get up there, pass a bill next week, and have a short-term fix in the form of a rebate to those paying high premiums. We could do that. Whether they choose to do that is a whole nother question. Federally, it's going to take longer.
And bonding bill, no way, I mean, that is,
I think the bonding bill will still come forward, but the context of it will be completely different. And so, they're going to have to work with the governor and appease him to some point. But it's, he still has that authority. And they do not have a veto-proof body in either body. So it's one of the things that they're going to have to work with the governor over.
And I would say that the bonding bill will be a challenge because if it doesn't come forward significantly similar to how it left the floor, the governor does have veto power, and if it gets where they take out all the things for the Twin Cities and only make it rural, I doubt he'll support that.
Well, good discussion.
Well,
Thanks for your service here. And by the way, last time you were on, you were sitting next to each other. You brought up that we weren't sitting together this time. That's not on purpose. It's just our new set. We all get along great. Thanks so much.
And I think that's one thing we should leave with is that, the sun came up. We got to move on. The elections had been called. In some way, we got to figure this out, and we can't wait another 4 years for the election. And the Republicans have a hard choice now. They have to lead, and it's on their backs and their shoulders to do that.
All right, thank you both. So thank you for joining us today on Our Town.
Join us next week when we talk with Aaron Reeves about the Uber taxi discussion taking place on the City Council.
We also get a look at the Rochester Pops Orchestra. See you then on Our Town, the show about Rochester.
Kiss in the sky, yeah.